Tokyo Xtreme Racer is a PlayStation 2 game. Now, years of YouTube comments from cynical types who were likely still jostling around inside an ovary at the dawn of the millennium may have taught you that PS2 is a pejorative, a one-size-fits-all put-down wielded against anything that doesn't melt the microprocessors off a graphics card. But it doesn't have to be. The PS2 was an incredible console, brimming with great, approachable games that achieved exactly what they set out to do, were hopelessly addictive, and completely unburdened by microtransactions and live service malarkey. This succinctly describes Genki's 2025 Tokyo Xtreme Racer reboot, which recently arrived in early access on Steam. A fantastically Moorish blast from the past that's simple on the surface, steeped in high-speed thrills, and, for now at least, unapologetically single-player. That's what makes it a game in the grand style of the PS2, and for that, I already love it. For clarity, I'm aware the overall lineage of this series dates back to 1994's Shitoku Battle on Super Nintendo, and the Tokyo Xtreme Racer name itself can be traced back to the series' Dreamcast debut and sequel in the US. However, in PAL territories, those carried different titles, and that's why I'm waxing romantic about the PS2, because 2001's Tokyo Xtreme Racer on Sony's all-conquering console was my first exposure to the series, and I admire how closely Genki has stuck to its enduring format well over 2 decades later. For those who haven't had the pleasure, the Tokyo Xtreme Racing series focuses strictly on highway street racing, taking a heavy dose of inspiration from the real-life underground racing scene that peaked on Tokyo's expressways back in the 90s. This was made infamous by the likes of the highly secretive Midnight Club, an allegedly disbanded racing community still shrouded in mystery today thanks to anonymity amongst its members and its strict low-profile policies. After choosing an on-ramp to enter the freeway system, which faithfully recreates Tokyo's actual Shuto Expressway network, the aim is to cruise and hunt down rival racers to challenge. Races are triggered on the fly by flashing your headlights behind potential rivals, and won unconventionally. There are no finish lines here. Instead, their spirit point bar will drain to empty as they drop further and further behind you, collide with members of the public, or graze the walls. It's part racing game, part fighting game, and it still works as well as it ever did. Wisely, Genki hasn't tampered with any of this, and it remains the structure of Tokyo Xtreme Racer's early access revival in 2025. The graphics have received a handsome enough modern makeover, but otherwise it's a staunchly old school experience. The result is terrific, and I'm hooked once more. Dueling against an opponent and slicing through late-night freeway traffic in a single direction may sound limited and repetitive. In a way, I guess it is, and yet it's utterly absorbing. Even in early access, Tokyo Xtreme Racer features over 200 named opponents to seek, stalk, and destroy. Some are boss characters that will only emerge after you encounter the rest of their race team members and leave them for dust. Some can only be found and raced under certain circumstances, or if you perform specific tasks, the clues for which you can glean from conversations with rivals in parking areas. The writing in these conversations tends to be a bit overwrought, and the story itself leans a little too melodramatic for my tastes, but there is a goofy charm to it that I can stomach, much like this guy. The difference in difficulty between some of these opponents can be stark at times, so I will say that my experience has been a little uneven. One moment I'll be beating every buster I find, and the next some mystery hotshot is simply galloping away. Races that are evenly matched and decided by tactical slipstreaming or goading your opponent into an obstacle are the most fun, but they're a little too uncommon. This has the potential to create the occasional logjam in your progression because a lot of the upgrade paths are gated behind meeting certain criteria. Needing to beat specific races in order to earn the ability to purchase better parts might be a sore spot if you're already spinning your wheels trying to lure out and beat those races in the first place. It's a bit of a catch-22, and it's probably the primary reason I'm not a huge fan of these sorts of roadblocks in racing games. I'm generally of the opinion that if you have the credits, you should just be able to buy any cars and parts within your means. At any rate, this is the sort of early access feedback that, with any luck, should provide Genki the data to smooth out bumps in its progression road. Despite the occasional frustrating session, I'm still thoroughly addicted to vanquishing every rival I find. Each time you leave the garage represents the start of an in-game night, which concludes when you choose to return to the garage to spend your credits, or simply head straight out again for the next evening. Just one more night, I tell myself for the 10th time before heading back out into the expressways in search of prey. It's hard to quit, and not just because the option to actually do so from the garage is buried in a hidden menu I initially had no idea how to reach. You can't do it from your controller, in case you're wondering. You have to hit tab on your keyboard. In more ways than just that, the menu system does need refinement, as it also lacks quick D-pad support and requires us to use an analog stick as a mouse. It'd also benefit from some kind of global back button shortcut, so returning to the main garage screen from elsewhere, like the tuning menus, wouldn't require opening the menu bar and manually moving the cursor. Little tweaks like that would significantly sharpen up the process of menu navigation. Car handling, though, already has a slick arcade feel that's nicely tuned for smooth steering on a controller at high speed. That said, the chase view does lack the kind of looseness I crave in this sort of racing game, so even minor steering adjustments can be amplified to jarring yaws by the time they reach the trailing camera. This feels like something that could be tuned or potentially supplemented with an additional chase camera that isn't so stiff. For now, it's far easier to drive smoothly using bonnet cam. The list of cars whose bonnets you can see from there is a good start, and features just under 50 Japanese models at launch. Toyota, Subaru, Nissan, Mitsubishi, Mazda, Daihatsu and Suzuki are all in there. Honda remains conspicuously absent though. The cars look fine without being show-stopping, but they don't pick up damage or boast a level of detail as lavish as the vehicles featured in racing genre heavy hitters like Gran Turismo 7. However, the bigger issue at the moment is how they sound. Right now, Tokyo Xtreme Racer isn't so much extreme as it is tinny and toothless compared to any one of its arcade racing peers like Forza Horizon, Need for Speed, or even Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown. It's the one part of this retro game I wish wasn't stuck in the past. Anyway, in broad terms, a lot of the usual suspects are already on these streets. There's certainly plenty of room for it to grow, and looking at the car list for 2003's Tokyo Xtreme Racer 3, I'm sure I could make some fairly educated guesses regarding what may join a garage. What I will say, however, is I'd love to be more regularly surprised going forward. That is, some Japanese cars that get little to no love in video games would be perfect. Give us a Datsun 620, a 910 Bluebird wagon. Hell, what about a Mazda Road Pacer? I'm sure dropping in a custom 4-rotor would solve its acceleration problems. Let's go nuts! Tokyo Xtreme Racer is an infectiously addictive time capsule of a racing game that needs little more than a bit of menu refinement and some major aggression injected into its sound to really soup it up and prep it for even more classic Japanese cars to race in and against. In fact, it's already well worth its early access asking price. It's narrow in scope, but its highway battle hook makes it hard to put down, and its total lack of modern baggage like microtransactions and tacked-on multiplayer is outright refreshing. For more